Hey. So like Sean said, I'm Chelsea White, and I am an outreach specialist for the Seeing Eye. So generally, when we're not all quarantined, I travel the United States and Canada, sharing general information about dog guide travel. So how dogs work, what they do, what they don't do, that kind of stuff. And the more specific information about the Seeing Eye and our program and kind of what we do and how we operate and that kind of thing. So I am a guide dog user myself. I am currently working my 5th dog. She is about a 60-pound German Shepherd named Brooke. And Brooke and I have worked together now for almost 2 years. It'll be 2 years on Sunday, actually. So I actually live here in Texas. I live here in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. But the Seeing Eye is actually in Morristown, New Jersey. Not too terribly far outside of Manhattan, outside of New York City. So I get back up that direction probably 3 or 4 times a year for meetings and such. So, but because of the nature of my job, I travel so much. The only requirement from my job was pretty much to live near a good airport. So I figured, Dallas had 2 good airports, so that seemed to fit the bill. So, I guess a bit of sort of general information about dog guide travel. So generally, as a blind or visually impaired person, you have, several options for independent travel. You can use a cane. You could be a dog guide traveler. You could go with a human. So do sighted, human guide most of the time. A combination thereof. You can use technology to assist with some of your independent travel. But generally, most folks, either choose a cane or a dog. And the 2 main differences between, the big difference between dog guide travel and cane travel is very tactile. You use your cane tactily to find those curbs and steps, to find the obstacles and get around those obstacles. You use your cane to tactily, to some extent, to help keep you going straight down the sidewalk. You use your cane to help detect surface changes, which then might indicate, your orientation. So a cane is very tactile travel. Dog guide travel is completely the opposite. A lot of that tactile information that you get from your cane disappears. Dog guide travel is sighted travel, albeit through a dog's eyes. So a lot of that, like I said, a lot of that tactile information sort of disappears. You get a little bit of tactile information through the soles of your feet, but a lot of that tactile travel disappears. What you get is sort of your dog's, you get a lot of information about your environment through your dog and through your other senses. So through hearing, through smell, those kinds of things. So like I said earlier, you use your cane to find those curbs and steps. Dogs are trained to stop at curbs and steps. So if you're walking down the sidewalk, you come to the down curb of a street, the dog is going to stop at that curb or that wheelchair ramp. And through, sort of time and distance and orientation and your hearing and things like that, you'll know that you've come to the curb or to the end of the street. Dogs will also stop at like I said, those steps. So if you're walking in a building, you come across a flight of steps, your dog is going to stop, reach your foot out, find the top of those steps, or find that first up step with your foot, and then tell your dog forward to go up or down those stairs. Same thing with a curb. Like I said, the dog's going to stop. You are going to listen to your traffic, because just like you do with a cane, it is your job to make the decision as to when it's safe to cross the street. Dogs don't make those decisions. Dogs are colorblind, so red and green and yellow really don't mean anything to them, and they can't read, at least to our knowledge, they don't read. And so the walk and don't walk signs also mean nothing to them. So it is your job to listen to your traffic, to know when it's safe to cross, and then to tell your dog forward to get across the street. Dogs are also taught to avoid those obstacles. So the bike racks, the light poles, the bicycles, the strollers, the people, all that stuff that's out there, that you would generally come into contact with your cane and then use your cane to, figure out how to get around that. The dog, as you're walking down the sidewalk, is going to see those things in the way. They've been trained to take you around those obstacles, and to pick the direction around those obstacles that would get you and them around it both safely. So you're walking down the sidewalk, say it's trash day, and people have garbage cans out in the middle of the sidewalk. Dog's going to see that coming up. They're going to go, okay, I can get around that to the left. So you may feel your dog pull you to the left a bit, maybe even into the grass, go around an obstacle, back to the right, and continue on down the sidewalk. So dogs are trained to take you around those obstacles that would be in your path of travel. Dogs know the directional commands of left, right, and forward. They also have, basic obedience commands, sit, down, that kind of stuff, like you would teach a normal pet dog. Dogs are also taught what we call intelligent disobedience. Intelligent disobedience basically says, if I give my dog a directional command, forward, left, or right, if that particular situation that we would be going into is not safe, the dog would refuse the command and not go. So say you're getting off of a DART train. You get off the train, you're standing on the platform, maybe you get a little jostled by, a bunch of other people getting off the train at the same time. And you mistakenly think that straight ahead is up the platform to get out of the station, where in reality, straight ahead would be off the edge of the platform on the other side. So if you were to tell your dog forward, your dog would say, nope. And would either just completely refuse the command and not go, or might go off to the right or to the left, which is basically telling you, you can't go forward. You need to either go left or right to get out of this station, because your dog saw that drop off and was like, nah, that's not safe. So that is basically what dogs are trained to do. They stop at elevation changes, curbs and steps, avoid obstacles, and then the intelligent disobedience. Dogs are not GPSs. You can't, tell your dog, dog, take me to Walmart, and end up at Walmart. The knowing where you're at, knowing how to get to where you're going, the orientation is all still your responsibility. Those orientation skills that you use with a cane, you're going to use with a dog, maybe a little differently. Time and distance become really important with a dog, and your hearing becomes really important with a dog. So they, you know, like I said, you can't say, dog, take me to Walmart, and end up at Walmart. You need to know, you know, how many blocks I walk, where I turn. You need to be able to, like I said earlier, listen to your traffic, know when it's safe to cross the street. Those kinds of things are still very important with a dog. And there are two things that dogs will do that canes just aren't really good at. One are overhangs. So that's stuff that it's about head level, tree branches, you know, the occasional maybe awning or you know, something in some construction. Dogs are trained to watch out for those things. They're considered obstacles, and they're trained to watch out for those things and to get you around them safely without, you know, cracking your head on something. The taller you are, the better your dog will be at it. Teaching a dog to look overhead is one of the hardest things that they teach a dog. So they're pretty good at it. They're better than a cane for sure. But like I said, the taller you are, the better your dog will be at the overhead obstacles. The other thing that dogs are really good at that canes aren't quite so good at is dogs are trained to be of assistance in traffic. So I said earlier, it's your job to listen to traffic to know when it's safe to cross. But dogs are trained that, you know, cars, especially when they're moving, are things to be aware of and to be cautious around. So say, for example, you're standing at a street corner and you have your street in front of you and your parallel street that you've been walking along is on your left. So you're walking down the sidewalk, get to the street corner, dog stops, you stand, listen to your traffic. The traffic in front of you is still moving, so you wait, and that traffic stops, and you get your good parallel surge. So you know that, okay, this is when I need to start my street crossing. So you tell your dog forward, and the second after you say forward, two things happen. One, your dog does not move, and two, you hear that really quiet car that was sitting there on your left make a right turn. What happened there was your dog saw that car starting to move before you heard it, and your dog said, we're not walking out in front of that car. That is also intelligent disobedience. Dog refused the command to forward because that particular situation was not safe. So that is what a dog would do in traffic. They can be of assistance, like I said, in traffic. And that's also sort of part of their intelligent disobedience training. So, you know, they're also, you know, will watch for cars that, you know, go whipping into parking lots from the street and stuff like that. So, so that is pretty much what, you know, what guide dogs do and what they don't do. You have about a dozen options for guide dog schools around the United States. All are essentially the same in that they train dogs as guides for people who are blind or visually impaired, but they're all a little bit different. So it is really, really important if you choose to get a dog to do some research. Talk to people with dogs from different schools, look at, you know, different websites. You know, if you have access to an orientation and mobility instructor who can, you know, kind of help you, you know, maybe do some research, that kind of thing. Because choosing a guide dog school is kind of like choosing a college. You know, all colleges have, you know, they're out there to provide an education, but they're all a little different. And so it's really important to choose the school, the guide dog school that's, you know, going to sort of suit you best and, you know, sort of fit your beliefs and, you know, the things that you want not only out of a dog, but out of a guide dog school. So the Seeing Eye, like I said earlier, we're in Morristown, New Jersey. We breed, raise, and train all of our own dogs. We use German Shepherds, Labrador Retrievers, Golden Retrievers, and we cross the lab with the Golden. Our training for a first-time dog handler is about 3.5 weeks. If you have had a dog from us before, you're with us a week shorter, so it's 2.5 weeks. For a first-time handler, we ask that you come to New Jersey and train with us. At in New Jersey, on campus, that kind of thing. We don't do home placements for first-time handlers. We will do home placements or a combination thereof that we call home and away for folks who have had dogs from us before. Our training, kind of one of the things that's sort of changed in the last few years in, well, dog training in general, but in guide dog training, is a lot of schools have gone to using a lot of food as the dog's reward for good behavior. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But we still, our dog's main sort of reward for good behavior is still praise. So, praise, good girl, good boy, maybe a scratch behind the ear, maybe a good pat, that kind of stuff is still our dog's sort of primary reward for good behavior. So we are considered one of the larger schools. We place about 250 dogs a year on average. Our classes can be as large as 24 students. They're typically more in the 18 to 20 range. And it is 4 students for every 1 instructor. And then every class also has a class supervisor. So one of the questions that people sort of think about or should think about when thinking about getting a dog is, once you get that dog and go home, what kind of support will or can the school that you get your dog from provide to you? Because you're gonna have questions. You put 2 living creatures together and crazy stuff happens sometimes. So one of the things you really need to think about is what can the school do to help you answer those questions, to resolve issues, that kind of thing. And we have a pretty extensive follow-up program. Our follow-up is graduate initiated. We don't come and check up on you or any of that kind of stuff. But if you have a problem, send us an email, give us a phone call, hey, my dog is doing X, I need some assistance. And we will do whatever it takes to try and resolve that issue. And if that means, sending one of our instructors to wherever it is you happen to live, and work with you on that issue, then that's what we'll do. So our instructors travel, they train dogs and train people with those dogs in New Jersey, but part of their, training process is to go out and assist graduates when they need assistance. So that is pretty much us. That's pretty much dog stuff in a nutshell. I will open it up for questions because I could talk forever and not answer people's questions. So
hey, Chelsea,
have questions.
Hey, Chelsea.
Yeah.
So I know one of the things that a lot of times comes up is, you do need to be a good cane user before you get a guide dog, right? Isn't that right?
You need to have, it's the orientation that we're looking for. So you need to be a good traveler. I always hesitate when people say good cane traveler because my cane technique is horrid. To be perfectly honest. I mean, I'm safe, sort of, mostly. So my keying technique is questionable. It's the orientation that we're looking for, knowing where you're at, knowing how to get there, and knowing how to get yourself unlost. So, if you get turned around, get lost, knowing how to sort of problem solve and work your way out of those situations is what we're looking for. And I'm going to tell you right now, not always, but most of the time, dog guide travelers are faster than cane travelers. So when you get lost with a dog, you could potentially be 3, 4, 5, 6 blocks off. When you get lost with a cane, typically, now there's always exceptions,
Mm-hmm.
but you may be 5, 10, 15, 20 feet off. So being able to, know how to get to where you're going, counting blocks, listening to traffic, paying attention to where you're at. Like I said, time and distance become really important with a dog. That stuff is all very important. In the application process for most, if not all, guide dog schools, you're going to be asked if you've had orientation and mobility training. And a lot of guide dog schools, if you say no, are not going to accept you at that point in time. They're going to say you really need to go and get some O&M training, get comfortable with your cane, get comfortable traveling, in your neighborhood, in your town, in your city, independently before they would, even consider you for a dog. So.
Very good.
Yeah.
Well, let's open the questions up here. And I think I just heard a chat, but I missed it.
Yeah, I'm been asked about eligibility for a dog and cost. And eligibility is pretty standard across the board. Cost is a bit different between schools. So I'll talk about eligibility first. Like I said, most, if not all, guide dog schools are going to require you to be a good independent traveler. That orientation and mobility is really important. The next thing that most guide dog schools are going to look for, and that we certainly look for, is the need for a dog. If in normal times, not right now, but in normal times, if the furthest you go is, your couch to your refrigerator and back to your couch, then the need is not there. Unless for some crazy reason your, refrigerator is a mile from your couch, the need is not there. If in, again, normal times, you are out and about going and doing, you're a student, you're employed, you're the main sort of errand runner in your family, whatever gets you out going and doing, then the need is there. So, and if you're out there, walking blocks and riding the bus and taking trains and, that kind of stuff, then the need is there. Obviously, the desire to have a dog. Canes are great. They require little to no maintenance. Maybe you replace a cane tip every once in a while. Maybe it gets muddy, so you might wash it a little bit here and there, but that's it, right? You get home, you throw it in the corner, you're done. That's it. Dogs require a little more care than that. They kind of like to eat. They, need attention. They need to go out several times a day to do their business. So the desire and the ability to have and to take care of just a dog. And so those are the things that we pretty much look for. And also somebody that's in relatively good physical shape. That kind of goes sort of along with need. You don't have to be a marathon runner or, climb mountains or anything like that, but relatively good physical shape, the ability to walk about a mile a day. It doesn't have to be fast, but it needs to be all at once. And you need, going along with that, we like to say not only the ability to walk a mile or so a day, but to have about a mile's worth of work for a dog most days of a week. So that's kind of the things that we look for. As far as cost goes, most guide dog schools provide the dog, the training, your travel to and from the school, all of that kind of stuff free of charge. Along with that goes ownership. And most guide dog schools that don't charge a fee also maintain some level of ownership to the dog. Now, Seeing Eye is a bit different. We do charge a small fee for the dog. It's $150 for your first dog. It's $50 for every dog after that. And if you are a veteran, it's $1. And we ask that you be the one to pay that money. We don't want it to come from DARS. We don't want it to, we want you to come up with that money. Doesn't have to be all at once. If you can do $5 a month, for however long that would take to pay $150. I'm not good at math. Then that's what you do. We don't charge interest. We're not going to come bugging you. We don't have to have the money before you come get a dog. But we do ask that, you pay that and that, you be the one to pay that, because once you complete training and go home with a dog, that dog is legally and literally your property. We maintain no ownership to that dog whatsoever. So like I said earlier, my dog is Brooke. Brooke is my dog. The Seeing Eye cannot for any reason come take her from me. So that's why we charge the fee. Because, if you pay for something, it's yours. Also, we have found that, if people are willing to invest a little bit of money into something, they generally, sort of have a little more, it's an investment into that thing. So that's why we charge the fee. So.
Chelsea, this is Kevin speaking. Yeah. What would you say to people who are considering training their own dog to become a guide dog or a service dog?
It's a lot of work. I have known people who have done it successfully. And I have known people who have done it and it's been a tragedy. It is, for folks who want to do it, be prepared to put in a lot of work. Because even before starting to train the dog to do a particular task, guiding, helping somebody with a physical disability, pick up, drop objects, open doors, whatever the task is you want the dog to do, you're going to have to select a puppy. You really should start with a puppy. Dogs from shelters are amazing, can be, but you don't know that dog's history. Service dogs are allowed in the public by law. So my dog is allowed to accompany me to the grocery store, to Walmart, to the mall, to a movie theater, to those public places that people go. My dog is allowed to be with me. A huge part of why she's allowed to be with me is because from birth, she was trained to be in public. So she was trained to lie quietly under tables in restaurants. She was trained not to react to loud noises. She was trained to not react to other animals. So she was trained to behave in public. And because she's well behaved is a huge part of why she's allowed. So service dogs, you know, while she's allowed to be with me in public, it is my job to, you know, make sure that she's, you know, well behaved and well mannered in public. So to train your own dog, you've got to start there. So you really should probably start with a puppy. And not all dogs are cut out to be a service dog. You know, 50% of the puppies that go into our puppy raiser homes to be raised by our puppy raisers, about 40 or 50% of those puppies never make it as guides for various reasons. So, you know, picking out a puppy and training it to do a particular task, if you're doing it yourself, you know, you may find halfway through the training that dog's not cut out to be a guide dog. So you gotta, you know, start all over again. So is it doable? Absolutely. I've seen it done very well. Is it a lot of work? It is a lot of work.
Yeah, that sounds like a lot of work.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to do it right,
Right.
it is a lot of work.
Yeah. Hey, we got like 3 questions here and probably about 20 minutes. We're not like on a tight schedule or anything like that.
I don't want to take up Eva's time though.
But let's get to the questions.
Go ahead. Megan has her hand raised. Go ahead, Megan.
Yes, I kind of have 2 questions. First question is, how, when applying for the program, can I apply after I've completed O&M training, or can I apply while I'm doing O&M training? And then my second question is, how long is the process before I actually would be able to get a guide dog? Like, is it 6 months to a year or longer?
Okay. So application process, I would start towards the end of training. So, you know, if you're just starting out, I would kind of wait till you're getting towards the end of your training. Because most guide dog schools, part of the application process is to come out and sort of do a personal interview. And part of that personal interview, they're going to want you to go out with your cane and, you know, walk several blocks, you know, cross a couple streets, that kind of stuff, so that, you know, we can, you know, make sure that, you know, your orientation is good and all that kind of stuff. So I would wait, you know, towards the end of any kind of training that you might be doing. As far as length of time for, you know, getting into a class, it depends on the school. You know, some schools, it is 6 months to a year. Some of your smaller schools. On average for us, when we're not in crazy times like we are now, your average wait is about 3 months.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So right now, we are completely shut down. We're not training dogs. We're not training classes. All of our dogs actually are not even on campus. They're back out with staff and puppy raisers and that kind of thing. So, but in normal times, average wait is about 3 months, 3 to 4 months. So,
Oh, wow. Okay, cool. Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thanks, Megan. Okay, let's see. Alex, go ahead.
So my question is, so I'm the O&M instructor at Lighthouse. So I was just curious as to what you would recommend for O&M instructors to properly prepare our clients for guide dog schools? Because I do have a couple of people that are interested. So I was just wondering how I could prep them for the process.
That's a really good question. So I was one of those kids. I think I was born to be a guide dog traveler. I love having a dog. I love traveling with a dog. I was born to be a guide dog traveler. And so I knew pretty early on that's what I wanted. So one of the things that my O&M instructor did with me was, for the lack of a better term, she called it stupid human guide. So we would go sighted guide, and she would sort of be the dog. Like, she would stop at the curbs and steps. She would go around the obstacles. She would do the things that a dog would do. But then I was the one responsible for, okay, we need to go left here. Listening to my traffic, telling her, okay, it's safe to cross. You know, I was responsible for the orientation part. And so that got me really good at, you know, paying attention to where I was, keeping track, you know, listening to my traffic. You know, she would do things. She would go wandering off into parking lots. And she'd be like, where are you? I'm not sure. Where's your traffic? It's behind me. Is your traffic supposed to be behind you? No, it's not. So she would do, and dogs will do stuff like that, right? They'll wander out. I mean, because they're not perfect, you know, they're dogs. I mean, they're trained and they're intelligent and all that, but they're still dogs. You know, they get distracted. So, you know, she would do stuff like that to really, you know, impress on me that I needed to, you know, to be paying attention and to keep track and all that kind of stuff. So does that help?
Awesome. Yes, very much. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Thanks, Alex. Okay, Anthony, go ahead.
Hi, Alex. Hi, Kevin, Sean, Rebecca. It's Anthony. I am in the process of trying to go through an immersion class with the guide dogs for the blind in California and in Colorado and in Oregon. And I do have a question. If you guys have an immersion class, because I know you guys, being from New Jersey, I know where you guys are located in Morristown, because I used to work out of Morristown Hospital as an EMT. And I used to see the guide dog school in downtown Morristown working with the students. And when I was seeing and working, it blew me away how they were adapting and so forth. Mm-hmm. And I feel like now I'm going back home, hearing about your school again, and I know where you're at and so forth. Mm-hmm. But I do have a question. Does the guide dog school in Morristown offer an immersion class for people that haven't completed their training, or it gives them an added tool to put in the toolbox? It gives them reinforces their training.
Sure. So do we offer a program like Guide Dogs does, or Leader Dog? Leader Dogs also has an O&M immersion program as well. We do not, unfortunately. We, you know, for folks who need some extra, you know, say you apply and we say, you know what, we really think you would benefit from some extra O&M. You know, we would highly recommend that, you know, you either get some O&M training, you know, from an O&M in wherever it is you live, or that you attend one of those programs. I know Leader Dogs has been doing, you know, their O&M immersion training program now for, oh gosh, a good probably 10 years. And, you know, Guide Dogs for the Blind has been doing the one that they've been doing now for 2 or 3, I think. You know, so they have, you know, pretty established programs that, you know, really do help. So yeah.
You know, and I also know this because my wife was looking at some organizations in Texas that you have to, and I know and I've asked this question to them, and they told me that everything is covered. and I know you brought it up in the past, but earlier, but some organizations, let's say in Texas, that offer guide dog training, you have to start a GoFundMe page and raise like thousands of dollars or $10,000 or whatever it is before you can even start to get a guide dog, because you have to pay for that cost for that service.
That's why it's really, really important to do your research and to choose a school that is reputable. Like I said earlier, all of the established guide dog schools around the country that have been doing this whole thing for years and years and years and years and years, either don't charge anything or do charge a small fee.
But my question with that, on top of that, should that be considered a red flag?
Yes. I would say so. Yeah.
That's probably a good point. And thanks, Anthony, for the questions.
Yeah. I mentioned earlier, one of the questions that you really should ask when you're doing your research is about follow-up, right? What can the school do to assist? The other thing to ask and to look for is International Guide Dog Federation accreditation. Okay. IGDF, International Guide Dog Federation, is the accrediting body for guide dog schools around the world. And to be an accredited IGDF school, you have to pass their accreditation process, and it's pretty extensive. It looks at everything. It looks at training, it looks at puppy raising, it looks at breeding, it looks at fundraising, it looks at, student services, it looks at everything. And you have to, pass all of their requirements in order to be IGDF certified. And not only do you have to pass all of that stuff but you have to be recertified. I think it's every 5 years. It's either 3 or 5. I think it's 5. So not only should you ask about follow-up and that kind of thing, but ask if the particular school that you're looking into is IGDF accredited. And if they say no, I personally would keep looking. So that's me more personally than, taking off my working for the Seeing Eye hat for a minute and putting on my guide dog user hat for a second and saying, I would keep looking.
Great.
So, and the Seeing Eye is IGDF accredited. So, we actually have two folks on our staff right now who are actually, they're called assessors, and they travel around the world assessing other guide dog schools. So they are, not only are we IGDF accredited, but we're actually pretty involved in the International Guide Dog Federation. So.
Rebecca, we got any other questions?
See, Kevin raised his hand for a minute. Kevin, did you have a question? Let me unmute him. Go ahead.
Okay. No, I didn't have a question.
One quick little question, Chelsea. So I'm sure people are curious about this. How much does it cost to train and raise a guide dog? Like, y'all put an amount. I've heard varying amounts for different schools, but
it varies a bit on the school just because of where folks are located. Obviously New Jersey and California are probably two of the most expensive places to live. So to operate in those particular places, it's pretty expensive. Just outside of Detroit, where Leader Dog is located, is the cost of living is a lot cheaper. So, the cost to do business is cheaper. But for us to breed, raise, and train the dog, and then to, sort of support that team through that dog's working life, it's about $70,000 per dog.
So you're basically getting a Lexus dog.
You're pretty much for the cost of like a Bugo or something.
Right.
Yes, our school is a nonprofit. We've been doing what we've been doing now for 90 years. Last year was our 90th anniversary, so 91 now. And the lady that started the Seeing Eye was very wealthy, was a very, very, very astute businesswoman, did a ton of fundraising, invested money very wisely. So about 60 to 65% of our yearly operating cost comes from the interest off those endowments and investments. But we still fundraise a ton. We do all kinds of things throughout the year, to raise money. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah. Guide dogs is pretty similar. They've been training since 42, I believe. So they also, have a very large endowment that they draw off of, but they also, just like us, do a ton of fundraising, all of the guide dog schools are nonprofit. Yeah. Yep. So, is there a benefit to that? Oh, you're really not. Since all guide dog schools are not for profit, there's really not an option there. So.
I can't imagine anybody really, that's 70 grand every 8 years for a dog.
Yeah.
Pretty rough.
Yeah. There's not many people. There's not many people in general who could afford that. So, but yeah. So Seeing, I'm going to toss out some contact information. And I don't know, Sean, if you guys put stuff up on, or can send out emails or whatever.
Certainly.
But, so Seeing Eye's website is seeingeye.org. And then our phone number is 800-539-4425. And my email, if you have any other questions, I'm more than happy to answer questions, is white C, so WHITE, the letter C, at seeingeye.org. So like I said, always happy to answer questions. If something strikes you later and you think, oh, I should have asked. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Chelsea, for being here. And
Absolutely.
you're always welcome to come join us. We're always, for the foreseeable future, we're here at 10 on Wednesdays. And
okay, fantastic. I'm interested in your games one next week. So.
Well, come. It's going to be at noon. And the great thing is that the join info is the same for every meeting. So
fantastic.
The email I sent you, just go there and you'll be right on.
Awesome.
And it's kind of cool. We're getting people from all over Texas, and we've got some people from Iowa and Pennsylvania on here as well. So we're kind of
cool.
Feel free to pass it around.
Oh, I definitely will. Thank you.
Great.
All right.
Awesome. Thank you, Chelsea.
Absolutely.
Well, Kevin, I think.
Question.
Oh, go ahead.
The last four are 0550.
Yes. Can we see Brooke? Her dog?
Excuse me?
Can we see Brooke, her dog? Mm-hmm. Isn't that the name of her dog?
Oh.
Through the video, right? Chelsea.
I'm visually impaired, so getting her in the video, who knows if you're going to see her, but nice.
Well, I'm my husband's seeing eye dog, so.
I think maybe you can see her.
You can go down just a little with the camera. We can see her nose. Oh, is she a German Shepherd?
She is a German Shepherd, yes.
Aw. Very sweet.
She is not a fan of this whole quarantine thing.
I bet not. I know I had a shepherd once. I remember, boy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay, Anthony, did you have a quick question? We're running a little
Couple.
behind.
I got a couple. Chelsea, does the Seeing Eye folks offer a plan for veterinarian costs? Because I know the Guide Dogs for the Blind in California offers some type of 25% for pet costs, veterinary costs. The other question is, now that I forgot what it was, I know that, well, here was a thought when I was sitting here thinking about this while listening to you. I guess there's also some training is, how do you know if the dog does his business and you got to go clean it up and so forth in public or whatever? I guess that could be a pain. I just can't remember the other one, which was other than that, I think that's about it for now. I guess I can always contact you if I have any other questions. Oh, I know what it was. If I go to one school, can I go to your school or another school to reinforce my training or to see what it is, to see a different taste of what different schools offer? Is that an advisable thing or no?
Okay, so first of all, do we offer vet assistance? We do not, because we give ownership of the dog to you. You know, that's kind of part of taking ownership of something, is it's your responsibility to, you know, take care of it. So again, that goes into researching schools that's going to suit you. If that's something that you need some assistance with, you know, several of the guide dog schools around the country will give some assistance for veterinary cost, because vet stuff is expensive. If you get a dog from a particular guide dog school, you would go to your particular guide dog school to get assistance with that dog. Now, if you get a dog from a guide dog school, that dog retires, passes on, and you want to go to a different guide dog school for your next dog, that's absolutely, I mean, people do it all the time. So, but if you have a dog already, to go to another guide dog school for assistance, or just, I mean, that's not something that's, you know, that would be advisable. So, and I can't remember your third question, so I'm sorry. But yeah, send me an email with other questions and I'd be more than happy to answer them, because I don't want to take up all of Neva's time. So.
All right. Thank you, Chelsea. We greatly appreciate your time and your insight. So thank you so much. All right. All right. So we have another guest with us this morning. Miss Neva, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Oh, good morning. Wonderful. Wonderful to hear you. How you doing this morning?
Good morning. I'm doing great. How is everybody?
Doing well. Doing pretty good. Well, I wanted to introduce you just briefly. You are Neva Fairchild, and you are with the American Foundation for the Blind. And Neva, I've known you for a few years as well. Way back in 2012 is when I first met you, or 2013. So, but it's been a while since we've talked. But yeah, but I'm glad you're with us today. Could you share with the group just a little bit about yourself? You know, your maybe some different aspects of your career and your journey with someone who's visually impaired, and also about what AFB does?
You bet. I'd be happy to. So I am 63 years old. So being born in 1956, when retinopathy of prematurity was a common malady for children born premature. And the loss of vision that I experienced as a child was attributed to that. And I had some vision when I was a kid. If I had a first grader, learn to read books, see Jane run, run, Jane run. And I held it right up to my face, so my nose was basically touching the paper. I could see the print. And so the realization that either A, was the cause of my vision loss, but I also have another condition, or that I was misdiagnosed until I was almost age 30, is impossible to know, because testing and knowledge of inherited retinal diseases was very limited in those days. And so at age 30, when my vision started to change, I was in the middle of my master's degree program, and the wonderful reading glasses that I had gotten from a low vision specialist about 10 years earlier, that allowed me to read regular print for the first time in my life, stopped working for me. And in the middle of a master's program is a really bad time to not be able to read anymore, because there's a lot of reading to do. And so that's when I went back to a retina specialist and said, what's going on? The doctors always said my vision was bad, but that it would always stay the same. And all of a sudden, I'm not able to read like I was able to read. And he said, well, of course, retinal problems are deteriorative. Wait a minute, that's not the right word. Degenerative, that's the right word. And I was like, of course they're degenerative. I talk about a slap in the face. My husband and I just sat there and looked at each other, because that was not my experience or my expectation at all. So they never could diagnose me at that retina practice, but they sent me to Retina Foundation of the Southwest, where for the first time in my life, I had an electroretinogram and was diagnosed with retinitis pigmentosa. But I have the weird kind. I have the Cone Rod Degeneration kind, which means my vision loss is really more like macular degeneration, except macular degeneration, which starts with your central vision and stops with your central vision. Cone rod degeneration keeps going through the rest of your retina, so that now 30 plus a couple of years later, I basically have light perception vision. So while I was a kid, I did everything that, my peers did. My parents had very high expectations of me. My vision loss was nothing they really ever understood. Their idea of helping me was to find a cure. So because we were in the Air Force and we moved all over the country, I went to lots of different eye specialists. And the verdict was the same. There's nothing to be done, but, she's doing pretty good. Keep on doing what you're doing. And so my parents, expected me to do all the things that other kids did, chores and homework and all those kinds of things. And looking back on it from the perspective of an adult, I'm very grateful for that, because can't wasn't a word in my vocabulary. I, of course, went through phases as a kid where I wanted to hide my visual impairment. I wanted to fake it, and try to act like I could see. I would leave my glasses at home or stick them in my pocket or purse. And when I couldn't see something, I would say, oh, I forgot my glasses. Can you read this? And that didn't work very well, but I tried it. Everybody has to try it. So going into college, basically, I decided as an 18-year-old, I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to teach kids with visual impairments and give them the opportunity to experience the broad perspective of a public education, because throughout the 12 years of school that my parents advocated for me, every school we moved to, and I was at 14 different schools in those 12 years because of being in the Air Force, every time they wanted to put me in the school for the blind. And my parents fought against that and won. And this was in the age before the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. But that also meant I had no accommodations. By the time I got to high school, there were these large print books that were, probably 17 inches tall by 24 inches wide when they were open on my desk, which of course was bigger than my desk. And they lived in my locker most of the time because I couldn't even get my nose close enough to the large print at the top left corner of the page to start reading without standing up and bending over. So it really wasn't very functional. So essentially I had no accommodations. I went off to college and I thought, I want to give kids who are blind or visually impaired, that same well-rounded experience I felt I had had. And I thought the way I would do that was to become a teacher. And I wanted to go to Texas A&M. Whoop. And they didn't offer special education as a bachelor's degree. So I started my bachelor's in elementary education with plans of getting a master's in special education. And instead, I got my MRS degree. I married my husband at the end of my junior year in college. He finished his master's degree. I left school. We came to the Dallas area, started our family, and I spent the next 9 years at home having and raising our 2 children until our daughter went off to kindergarten, half days. And I thought, I better get busy and get back into school. And by that time, I had volunteered in my kid's classroom, my son's classroom, and at my son's elementary school enough to know that classroom teaching was not for me. They're noisy little critters and they move around a whole lot and they don't listen. And I thought if I was a classroom teacher, I would have absolutely nothing left over at the end of the day to give to my family. And oh, by the way, I'd have all of that work that teachers do at home left to do when my eyes were already so tired, I wouldn't be able to do it anymore. So when I went back to the local community college in a women's returning to school program, I went back trying to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up. And the Office for Students with Disabilities person had gotten her bachelor's degree at UT Southwestern Medical Center in Rehabilitation Science. And she told me about the program. She gave me a brochure about the program, and it listed all of these different jobs that a person who had this degree could qualify for. And absolutely every one of those jobs sounded like something I would love to do. And so I applied for and was accepted to that program after 1 semester in the Women Returning to School program at Brookhaven Community College, for those of you who live in the Dallas area and may have heard of it. And UT Southwestern is a university located in Dallas that is a medical school. At the time, they had a allied health bachelor's department, several different degrees in allied health. And so I got my bachelor's degree in Rehabilitation Science. And the last summer practicum I was doing, I was a vocational evaluator in our lab there, which meant I administered and scored tests, vocational tests for people with all types of disabilities. And I absolutely loved it. And I was sitting there scoring tests, and my professor came in and sat down and started working on some of the folders, because we would see between 10 and 20 people per week. So there were lots of tests to score. And then he wrote all of the reports, analyzed all the tests and wrote all the reports, but I was kind of the workhorse. And we're sitting at this table, and he said to me, Neva, you really ought to apply for the graduate program. And I said, oh, Steve, I don't have what it takes to get a master's degree. And he says, yeah, you do. And you should, because you are going to go to work with your bachelor's, and you're going to find out that you need your master's to do the things you want to do. And then you're going to have to either A, give up your income and come back to school, or B, go to school at night while you work full time. Neither one is ideal. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, it's a good point. His other point, which I found out later didn't make any difference to me, but at the time it sounded important, because this was 1988. I was 32 years old, finishing my bachelor's degree. And he said, you're going to go to work with your bachelor's, and a couple of years from now, some snot-nosed 24-year-old is going to go to work as your supervisor. How are you going to feel about working for somebody who's younger than you? And I thought to myself, oh, I wouldn't like that at all. Well, I found out later I never was cut out to be a supervisor. So I've worked for people who are younger than me, and I've loved it. So that really wasn't a reason, but at the time I didn't know that about myself. So I applied for and got into on a provisional basis, because I hadn't taken the GRE at the time, into the master's program. I graduated with my bachelor's on a Sunday, and I started my master's program on a Monday. And it was a two-year master's program that included writing a thesis. And I crammed that 2-year program into 4 years, because I went to work as a graduate assistant in that vocational evaluation lab. So it was like I had a part-time job, and I loved it. And so working on my thesis wasn't very high priority list for me. And then I got my first job as a vocational evaluator at the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind in 1991. And I enjoyed that very much. I wondered about 6 months in if I would ever meet a client that I would be doing testing for that was just blind or visually impaired, because always there was something else going on. There were other health issues, there were mental health issues, there were behavioral issues, there were intellectual issues. There was always something else going on. And it was a very eye-opening experience for me to figure out that, oh, wait, everybody has something else going on in their lives besides just their vision loss usually. You know, whether it's family issues or social issues, you know, socioeconomic issues, all of those things play a role in our ability to be successful at life. To go to school, to learn, to go to work, to thrive, to excel. And so I was there for about 15 months, and I loved doing the testing. But at the time, the Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind allowed smoking indoors. And I have asthma, I've had it all my life. And as a college student, it really kind of disappeared. And 15 years later, working at the Lighthouse, it reared its ugly head again, and it was getting worse and worse. And one day my doctor asked me a question: why are you working someplace that's killing you? You have got to get out of a smoke-filled environment. And so I resigned, and I stayed home that summer with my kids. And you know, I'd only been working 15 months, so we had lived on my husband's income for many years, and adding my income to it hadn't really changed our lifestyle. So giving up that income wasn't really a problem. But I had gotten my degrees in order to work and to contribute. And that summer I learned of a job at the Texas Commission for the Blind, which was the name of the state vocational rehabilitation agency at the time. And I applied for and got a job as a vocational rehabilitation counselor. If any of you have ever worked with state VR, you know that that's the person that kind of coordinates the services and works with people to help them to achieve their goals in life and to go to work. And I really enjoyed that. I did that job for the state for 5 years, and I had a college caseload. So I was working with people that were all different ages, and I felt like I brought something to the table for most everybody on my caseload, because I had gone to school, to college for the first time as an 18-year-old with absolutely no skills. And I was marginally successful. My first couple of years were not great academically, but they got better as I built my skills. I can still remember my first comprehensive final exam in one of my freshman fall semester classes, realizing that all of those notes that I took by hand at the beginning of the semester and I wrote in cursive in my cute little college lined spiral notebook, that at the end of the semester I could no longer read, because reading what you've written is partially being able to see it, but when you're visually impaired, it's also very much what you remember writing. And 3 months after writing notes in I don't know what kind of history class, maybe it was American history, there was no way I remembered what I was writing, what I had written, and I could no longer read it. So note to self, start printing notes next semester. Some of those kinds of rude awakenings, I thought I would be able to help those 18-year-olds going off to college. And then I had also gone back to college as an adult with a family and other things to juggle and life decisions to be made that were based on, different decision-making criteria than those decisions at age 18. And so I did enjoy that. I worked with a lot of great people, a lot of people that I've encountered over the years since then that have gone on to be extremely successful, and some that never finished and never really reached their full potential. During that time in my life, I was introduced to assistive technology. I saw my first CCTV in those days. By the time I left university, the master's program, I had a PC with Zoom text and WordPerfect 5.1 running DOS. Some of you younger people won't know what I'm talking about, but that's okay. And I loved technology. It was the big difference in my life that really allowed me to do a lot of things that I never dreamed I would be able to do. And so an opening came up and I applied for and got a job as an employment assistance specialist for the state, which meant I was a consultant working with the counselors and the consumers or customers they served, as well as the employers that would hopefully employ the people who were on their caseload someday. And we looked at the person's abilities and skills and what they needed to improve in order to use technology. We looked at what kind of technology would be needed in order to do a particular job. So I learned to analyze and break down jobs to their task components and figure out how could a person who is totally blind or a person who has low vision do this job. And then I advised the counselors and the consumers on what to do, as well as the employers when they were interested in having in making changes and that kind of thing. And I did that job very happily until American Foundation for the Blind approached me in late 2007 about coming on board at the Center on Vision Loss in Dallas as a national specialist working in Esther's Place, the demonstration model home that was there at the center, coordinating all of the products that were on display, coordinating a volunteer corps that gave tours, and helping to improve those displays, if you will, or areas of focus within Esther's Place to help introduce people hands-on to the kinds of things they could do to remain independent at whatever age. And so this took my focus from assistive technology only pointed at work to technologies and devices pointed at all aspects of life, as well as to all ages, not just working age people or transition age students who were looking towards work, but from babies all the way up to seniors. And I started at AFB in 2008 at the Center on Vision Loss, and absolutely loved showing people the possibilities. So many people came to the center with no hope. They didn't think that there was anything that could help them to do the things they needed and wanted to do. And I would say 99 times out of 100, I was able to find them a way to do it. Now, they may not have wanted to go to the effort to do something the way we figured out they could do it, but I could usually figure out a way. Sometimes that way was a sighted helper. You know, sometimes there's just no solution to an issue for a person, especially who's totally blind, other than a sighted assistant, like at the time, reading cursive handwriting or hand printed things. Now we have Seeing AI, and it does a pretty fair job at handwriting. It's not perfect, but it's as good as OCR, optical character recognition, was back in the 90s when it was an infant. And I know that handwriting recognition is going to improve with time. But in 2018, is that right? No, sorry. In 2018, in May of 2018, AFB National Office, which is in Washington, D.C., made the decision that the Center on Vision Loss in Dallas would be transitioned away from operation by AFB to operation by a direct services entity rather than AFB, because our focus was shifting to policy and regulation and affecting systems change. So for almost 100 years, AFB was in the business of helping people negotiate the quote unquote system, whether it was the education system, the vocational rehabilitation system, or the aging system. We helped people with advice and websites and brochures and books to help them do that. And we shifted our focus about 2-3 years ago to changing the system rather than teaching people how to negotiate it, because so many organizations have popped up around the country, both national and local, to help people do just that. So we decided that instead of continuing to focus on negotiating the system, we would start focusing on changing the system to make the need for negotiating less, to make everything more accessible. So AFB's, I guess it's our mission statement now, is creating a world of no limits. And that's what we're working towards. So eliminating barriers instead of having to come up with workaround solutions. And that's where my focus changed from the center. We closed up Esther's Place, which just about broke my heart. I did a lot of shedding of tears over that, but I can happily say that the Dallas, Envision Dallas, which used to be called Dallas Lighthouse for the Blind, is going to be reopening Esther's Place this fall and is taking over the other programming duties, if you will, of the Center on Vision Loss. They're at their facility, and they're going to expand it so that instead of just being able to take a tour of Esther's Place, you'll actually be able to receive training there. So you could attend a cooking class or a sewing class or a craft class or a housekeeping class, or I don't know what all, but they're going to be offering direct training that we could never offer if the program had stayed with AFB, because we didn't have the staff, and it really, direct services has never been AFB's focus. It's been more like advisement and education making people aware of what's possible. So about 2 years ago, my focus started changing, and the last 2 years have been a real period of transition for me. I continued to work in the office for a while during 2018 and the first part of 2019, but as of April 1st last year, I've been working full-time from home. Working remotely is awesome. Being able to, get up and stumble to my desk and answer some emails even before I get my first cup of coffee is a godsend. In fact, it's allowed my husband and me to move to Flower Mound, which, if you know anything about the Dallas-Fort Worth area, has no public transportation, which right now during Corona isn't really a problem because I'm not going anywhere. I haven't been outside my house since March 23rd. But the other thing is that because I remote into my job, I don't have to travel to an office every day. And so the need for public transportation was virtually eliminated from my life. And this has allowed us to live near our daughter and her family and their two-year-olds. And I did triple my commute though. My walk from my bedroom to my office in our old house was 6 steps. This is 18 steps. So, I've gone through some inconvenience, but not really. And what I'm focusing on now in my work is working with people who are older, who are losing vision later in life, and helping them to realize helping to change how people perceive them and to change the kinds of services and supports that are out there for people, and to help the aging network, the world of senior services, if you will, to realize that there's a great many people out there with late onset vision loss, as well as people who have lived all their lives with vision loss who are getting older. But it's the ones who are losing vision later in life who really are struggling. They don't know what's possible. They do not want to be considered visually impaired, low vision, blind. None of those words resonate with them. They're just having trouble with their eyes because they're getting old. But what they don't realize is that all of the things that are out there to help people of any age to live with less than 20/20 vision will help them. So first of all, you have to get over the resistance, and then you have to make them aware of what all's out there. Like the Talking Book program, for example, can make such a difference in someone's life. Learning O&M skills to be able to walk safely from point A to point B is essential for living with less than 20/20 vision. Otherwise, you're living the life of a prisoner in your own home because you don't feel safe leaving it. And you aren't safe leaving it unless you're clinging to somebody's arm. And what if they leave you somewhere and wander off to do something and then you're stuck wherever they leave you? And what if there's nobody going where you want to go, with those types of things? Helping them to realize that there are public transportation services that can help them, like paratransit, helping them to access the services. And that's the policies I'm working to change, to make sure that the aging network providers are aware and that they are advocating for the people they serve, and then also helping to bring services to the private not-for-profit for seniors as well, and helping them to not only provide promising and best practice services, but I'm very dedicated and working hard on helping them to measure their outcomes so that we can say to policymakers and legislators, look what a difference this service made to these people. And now they're more independent. They're less dependent on public aid and assistance, they're safer, they fall less, they're healthier, they use less Medicare and Medicaid money, so that we can eventually convince them to give more money from the government budget to providing those services to people who are older, whether their vision loss is new or long-term. So that's what keeps me busy. Just to synopsize, just to tell you the rest of the story. My husband and I have been married for over 43 years. We have 2 adult children who are also both married. Our son and his wife live in Denton. They have our 8-year-old granddaughter, Stella. And my daughter, who lives 12 houses away with her husband and 2 2-year-olds, are foster parents and about to be adoptive parents. And so my passion, besides my work, is being involved with my family and my darling grandchildren. I have my second seeing eye dog. Shout out to Chelsea and the seeing eye. Vinny. I didn't become a dog guide user until I was 49 years old. I actually didn't learn to use a long white cane until I was 30 years old, when I went back to college after having my children and raising them up to get to school, because I never knew about white cane training and usage before that. And I really never went anywhere alone for the first time before I was 30 years. So I have lived that bird in a cage life, never knew there was something better. And once I did know it, I was like the bird set free from the gilded cage. And I travel the country alone or with my dog, depending on when you talk about the trip, and enjoy my independence and my ability to use technology to achieve all the things I want and need to do in life on an everyday basis. And I encourage you to do the same, because life with vision loss is worth living. I'm here to testify.
Wonderful. Neva, that is truly awesome. Thank you for sharing all of that with us. That's a great story.
Thank you, Neva. This is Sean, by the way. Neva, I was just going to make a comment. I do remember DOS.
Oh, good.
And Word Perfect.
I wrote my master's thesis on a 13-inch monitor with 8x zoom text magnification. I could get 3 lines on the screen at the time and 8 characters wide. And the title of that thesis was That Damn Thesis.
Yeah. Boy, times have sure improved, haven't they?
I have.
You know, Neva, when you were telling the story earlier about, you said that you had forgotten your glasses and that's why you couldn't see. That reminded me, because I have retinitis pigmentosa as well. Mm-hmm. And years ago, I was losing sight, and I was to the point where I couldn't quite read print. And I'd be out at a restaurant with some friends of mine, and I couldn't read the menu. So I thought I would be clever, and I'd let everybody else order before me. And then that way I would know what's on the menu. Mm-hmm. And then but I'd hold the menu in front of me, acting as if I was, reading it. Yeah, but unbeknownst to me, I had it upside down most of the time, as it turns out. So,
see, this is why faking it till you make it does not work.
Does not work.
when I lost the ability to recognize faces very mm-hmm. well, I was embarrassed to admit that I didn't know who the hell I was talking to, And I was cured of that mm-hmm. one day at church when a woman walked up to me and she said, "Hi, Neva." And I'm like, "Oh, hi, how are you? Oh, it's wonderful to see you. How have you been?" Well, I called you yesterday and told you my dad died.
Oh my gosh. Wah, wah, wah. Wow. That's why Sean and I say, we're great with names but terrible with faces.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm terrible with voices. And you would think, as a person who can't see much, most of my life, I'd be good at that, but I'm not. And so I have learned, and that was the cure, because I hurt her terribly by being all bubbly and, you know.
Sure.
And so now what I do when somebody comes up and says, "Hi, Neva, how are you?" If I don't recognize their voice, I stick my hand out and I say, "Hi, who's this?" And then they go, oh, it's whoever, you know? And it slowly but surely, people have started, the people that, you know, I encounter on a not so regular basis, that I've done that to a couple of times, they'll say, "Hey, Neva, it's Sharon," or "Hey, Neva, it's Kim," you know? And I appreciate that so much, because then I can start the conversation off in context, not waiting for that context to come out of the conversation.
Yeah, that's very, very wise. Sure. Any questions out there for Miss Neva? We got some participants out there. Any questions about what American Foundation for the Blind does, or about Miss Neva and her journey?
Yeah, and if you want to ask a question, just remember, if you're dialing in on the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand. On the computer, it's Alt-Y. So I think Alice has a question.
You are unmuted by host. Audio now unmuted.
I don't really have a question. I just, a lot of things she said have been interesting to me. I'm almost 78, of course, and I live in a senior residence. They have individual apartments, and we don't have care and all here. But boy, it's so difficult to overcome the stigma of so many of these people who are my age, some of them younger, from about 60 on, to try to get them to encourage them. I've encouraged an awful lot to try to get to the lighthouse or to get the things they need. And the first question they give me all the time is, what all do I have to do to get there? And where do I go to get the paperwork? And how am I going to get there to get the paperwork?
Right.
And that is a big problem, because these are people that have gotten to the point, most of them have worked part of their life, but they've gotten to the point now that they can't see and they're afraid to go anywhere. Unless family member takes them, and family members are working.
And sometimes family members aren't that understanding anyway. Because if they've lost some vision, you know, they see them in familiar surroundings, and mom seems to be doing just fine. And what are you talking about? You can't see to pay your bills, mom. I just watched you cook, you know, scrambled eggs and bacon and toast in the kitchen. How can you not see? You can't cook if you can't see. Well, yeah, you can. Yeah. And so it's really a problem. And I have kind of two mantras that if I could put billboards up on every major highway in the United States, they would have these two phrases on them. Blind people can do stuff.
Yeah.
Okay? Because the majority of the world thinks that people who have less than perfect vision are incapable. Okay? And then the other thing I would put on my billboards is it would say, blind isn't bad. It's just different. There's nothing to be ashamed of that you can't see something. It's not bad. It's just you have to learn to do things differently. And it's worth it.
Yeah, can I say one thing?
Mm-hmm.
Against my profession, I'm a retired nurse.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors who take care of people's eyes are not geared to people needing education to what they need. They do not encourage them to get in touch with whatever local agency there is that can help them. A lot of them don't even know what the lighthouse is. somehow
Bob Barnes has joined a meeting.
There's lacking in their training to understand. And a lot of their patients are my age. I've sat in many eye doctor offices and looked around and seen a good many of them are my age or from 60 on up. And why don't they have some kind of education to be able to hand them a paper or something and say, this is out there for you if you want to take it.
AFB has fought.
Everybody seems to reach them to understand that.
Yeah, AFB has fought that battle for many years. I joined the Army in 2008, and really I had been fighting that battle before that just to get people to know about state VR services. And here's what doctors have told AFB when they did focus groups and research into why ophthalmologists, retina specialists in general, or specifically, but ophthalmologists in general don't tell people about low vision specialists, which can make a huge difference for people who still have remaining vision, because low vision aids maximize your ability to use your remaining vision, okay? And then B, they don't tell them about nonprofit, private, not-for-profit, state, or any other kind of agency that helps, like the Lighthouse or the state agencies, because of two things the doctors told us. Number one, they feel uncomfortable talking with a person about vision loss that is not repairable. If you've got cataracts and they can remove your cataracts, or you've got a retinal tear and they can repair your retinal tear and you're going to have 20/20 vision again, they are all for it. But when there's nothing to be done medically, they are uncomfortable talking about it, and they are anxious to get on to the next patient because their schedules are completely overloaded so that they can keep up with the demands of the population who needs treatment, as well as the demands of the insurance industry to produce a profit, to make money for their practice and themselves or their hospital or their whatever.
Yeah.
It's a lose-lose proposition because they're not really helping their patients. We produce so much material. We did a mailing from the center, just little bitty old Dallas, Texas, okay? We mailed out 8,000 brochures and a little reply card to ophthalmologists in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, the 11 counties. There are 8,000 plus ophthalmologists. And that little reply card said, we'll provide these brochures. And it was basically a brochure that said, the Center on Vision Loss can help you continue to function despite vision loss, basically, okay? And the little reply card, all they had to do was say, check, send me more, and put their name and address on it. And we would have sent them a stack of 50 out of 8,000.
From Shauna T231. Thankful for my eye doctor. He is wonderful.
I'm glad you have one that is responsive to you. But you want to take a guess on how many cards we got back out of 8,000?
Probably 8.
23. 23 out of 8,000.
Wow. Thanks, Alice. I want to see if we had any more questions here.
Thank you. Megan has a question, Sean. Go ahead, Megan.
Cool. Hello.
Hi, Megan.
Hi. Just listening to what you said and Miss Alice said, I'm in my early 30s and I kind of lost my vision like overnight. And the fear of leaving your house and the fear of, I think what kind of saved me was when I lost my vision, the following week, a friend told me, you have got to advocate for yourself. And I was like, okay, I have no idea where to start on that, but sure. Okay. And so, yeah, so that fear is kind of just across the board, I think, for everyone. And it breaks my heart when I see older individuals who kind of are nervous to kind of, get out there and experience the roles again. But my biggest thing is, what advice? So I would like to be an occupational therapist, but I am scared to death that I will be limited because I cannot see. And what advice could you give for someone? I got my bachelor's degree when I was sighted. And so I have no idea how I'm going to get a master's and a PhD with no vision, even with the accessible tools. So if you could offer any advice to be like, hey.
Okay, well, two pieces of advice is one, find an occupational therapist or a handful of occupational therapists who will schedule time to let you do what is called an informational interview. Okay. And find out what their typical day looks like and talk to them about all of the visual tasks that they must do. Okay. And then start problem solving and figuring out, all right, how am I going to do that? They take blood pressure. They have to take blood pressure at the beginning of every one of their visits. Okay, how am I going to do that? All right. Okay. And come up with your own solutions as much as you can. And then the second piece of advice is to find a resource for being mentored by other blind students who are working on advanced degrees. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. And then practice what you learn from them about how do they get through school, how do they get their reading done, how do they take their tests, how do they do their research, how do they write their papers, blah, 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 all that. Okay. And then take some undergraduate classes. You're probably going to have some prerequisites unless you had a science or medical oriented bachelor's. You're probably going to need to take some prerequisites. And even if you don't, even if you get accepted into a master's or PhD program that says, no, you have what you need, don't believe them. Okay. Don't do it. Take some classes. Like, let's say in occupational therapy, one of your classes is going to be anatomy and physiology. All right. You got to learn a lot about muscles and bones and nerves and stuff like that in OT. All right. Go take an AP class at the community college or the local university. And if you live in Texas, know that going to college is tuition and fee free if you attend a state supported school. So community colleges and universities that are associated with the state university program, you can attend tuition and fee free. So to experiment does not necessarily mean you have to get a college loan and you have to go into debt for the rest of your life. Right. And then to get your degree, it also doesn't mean that you have to, necessarily have to, take out huge loans. Hopefully you can get grants, and the state agency should support you as well to become an occupational therapist. And when you become an occupational therapist, please specialize in vision therapy. Yes. So that all of those people you meet in your career who have vision loss, you're going to know how to help, because that is not a foregone conclusion with OTs. They're doing a lot of it, but they don't necessarily have the training in it.
That was my next thing, is that that's where I would like to focus, is vision therapy. I don't see a lot about it out on the internet, so I don't know what it all entails.
There's a second specialty, and it's called vision rehabilitation therapy. And Kevin Higgins is the perfect one to talk to you about that.
Awesome.
That's what he does.
Cool.
Mm-hmm. Neva, you mentioned the tuition. Because of that, I was able to go to Stephen F. Austin University many years ago. That's where I graduated from, but that was instrumental in me going to college. So I'm very thankful for that. Any other questions?
Last four digits are 4620.
All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello.
Hello.
I just lost my vision probably late 50s. Now I'm like 62 years old. So I'm basically sitting home all day because I can't really do anything. I did have some vision, and now it's just almost completely gone. I can see like light, and I have this the Maryland here, but I'm trying to learn how to work my iPhone with the voiceover. It comes in too fast, so I don't know how. I just don't know how to work it. And then where is it? Anywhere I can go once all of this shelter in place is over, where I can learn how to use my iPad and my phone and different stuff like that?
Absolutely. Kevin and Sean know this about me, and maybe some of the others on the call do too, is that's my passion, is connecting people up with resources. That's what I loved doing when I worked for the state and when I worked at the Center on Vision Loss. So Hadley Institute for the Blind is a free correspondence course, and on their website, on their main page, are video training programs that are free that will let you play a little snippet of a video about getting started with your iPhone. And eventually, hopefully very early, one of the things is to slow down the speech rate on your iPhone or your iPad so that you can understand voiceover. Because you've got to understand it, you've got to comprehend it to be able to use it. And after your ear gets used to it and you become more accustomed to listening rather than seeing, you'll be able to speed it back up. And I recommend that you do that so that you can eventually be as productive as you used to be with your eyeballs than you can be right now with just your ears. And that was my next thing, is open up, is the Lighthouse. The Lighthouse of Fort Worth offers that kind of direct training. And you know, that's important, because sometimes it only takes a little bit to get started, and then you learn enough to go exploring and learning on your own. So, and it really does depend on your learning style too. OIB program is the same program for seniors. And they don't necessarily probably offer direct training on your iPhone, but if you need a tip or something turned on or turned off or slowed down or whatever to get started, they'll certainly help you with that, but they'll also help you with skills like orientation and mobility skills training and getting your home adapted so you can use your microwave and your stove, and you can do it safely and you can do it independently.
Go ahead, Sean.
Oh, I was just going to say, I will also mention that tomorrow at noon, if you call back in tomorrow at noon, we're going to do a tutorial, Kevin and I, on voiceover. So
there you go.
Unfortunate that we all can't meet together right now, but hopefully soon enough we'll be back able to work with people in person, but we're trying to do what we can via this medium.
There's also a Monday night call called iBug Today. It stands for iPhone Blind Users Group. It's out of Houston, but it's free. And if you go to ibugtoday.org.
Yeah, that's right. That's correct.
It is org. You can get their call-in information, and they sometimes offer extra classes. And the first part of their call is dedicated to rookies. And then the last part of their call is more advanced. So, you know, you make the decision as to how long you stay and what questions you ask.
I think they have a mentor program as well. So if you check out their website, they have kind of like a mentor. They assign people to work with you. So there's several resources there for you, especially if you would call back in tomorrow at noon. We'll be glad to help you.
And they also help people on Android phones. If there's anybody listening who doesn't have an iPhone or an iPad, the Android-based products with TalkBack, they also have the same kind of help with, which is wonderful, because there's not as many of us out there that use Android.
And you say it's iBug, like EYE bug?
And no, it's the letter I for iPhone, BUG for bug, and the word today, TODAY.org. O-R-G.
iBug Today.
Okay.
Make a note.
What do you want it to say?
Oh, somebody's saying ibugtoday.com. I actually think they both work. I remember hearing that. They're doing a Friday night movie during the COVID-19 isolation, and I'm pretty sure I heard somebody say the other day that they have both of those URLs.
iBug.org.
iBugtoday.org.
iBugtoday.org.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah, I just did ibugtoday.org and it worked. So it looks like both of them do work.
Yeah.
And will it talk back to me, or will I have to get somebody to click on something for me? Or
you probably have to get somebody to help you with going to their website to find out their information to get on their call. I think their calls are on Mondays.
They are Monday evenings.
So we can at least get you kind of going tomorrow, and then I'll get the information for that and have it for you tomorrow.
Okay, so I can log on tomorrow at 11. I mean at 12, right?
Yes, ma'am.
I get my daughter to do it for me, and that's another thing. Like I was wondering about the programs like Zoom Tech and stuff. I just want the one that speaks to me. Mm-hmm. Which one is that? Is that
JAWS or NVDA? Right now, JAWS is free through the end of June, and NVDA is always free.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and I've used both of them. They both work well.
You say MDA?
N as in non, V as in visual, D as in desktop, A as in access, NVDA. If they do a Google search, your family member does a Google search for NVDA, it'll come up and it's a free download. And then JAWS is at freedomscientific.com.
Freedomscientific.com. You said non-vision, D as in dog, A as in apple.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna make a note. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
And the guys at the Lighthouse of Fort Worth are an amazing resource for this anytime. That Sean and Kevin have, a lot of these resources up their sleeves. So don't think you won't ever have a chance to ask this question again.
Yes, definitely.
Oh yeah, because I've worked with Sean before, but it's just that I was at the point I just didn't want to come to terms that I wasn't going to see. Yeah. So, I was just determined that I'm going to see. So
there's always an adjustment. There's always an adjustment to loss.
That.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just, I'm learning. I go, okay, it doesn't mean I have to sit here like I can't, because I did work, but I didn't work this year because it was just so hard.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Right on. Okay, you don't have to just sit there, and I'm glad to hear you say that, because that's a sign that you've got the motivation and initiative to do something about it.
So thank you, and I just found this helpful to me today. So I'll get my daughter to look into that, and I will. Once we start back up, I know Brooke will help me get stuff in place, because I was just wondering, will it be any way I could be trained to work somewhere?
Absolutely.
Or okay,
absolutely.
That's I really want to do that. So.
If you are physically able to work, there is no reason that vision will keep you from working.
Okay.
And I also might add to that it's just purely my opinion, but I feel personal independence comes sometimes before vocational independence.
Absolutely.
And what I mean by that is, you're going to have to be independent, in your home and in your community, by way of orientation and mobility training or assistive technology training, and so forth, because all of those skills are prerequisites for one being able to be successful in a workplace. And so I was just encourage you to continue to explore your resources and to expand upon the training that's available to you.
And absolutely,
okay, I appreciate it.
Independent living skills is the foundation on which vocational skills can be built. without those independent living skills, like the ability to set your alarm and get up on time and fix your hair and have clean clothes and fix your lunch and contribute to the potluck on somebody's birthday and those kind of things. Without those skills, your vocational skills are built on a foundation of toothpicks, and they are going to crumble. And you need those strong, I can do this, I can do anything I need to do around my house, I can go anywhere I want to go in the community, and now I can do anything I want to do on a job.
And that's another thing. I just had to get over being fearful. I'm like, you know, I don't like it when anybody walk up to me and they touch me, and I tell her, don't touch me. Tell me who you are. I mean, it's just, I just can't hardly deal with people touching me and I don't know them, you know.
So, you know, one of the things you can do is for your family and people that are around you a lot is ask them, you know, I'm really making an adjustment here. And when you just walk up quietly and touch me, it scares me. And I don't like being scared. So when you're walking up toward me, make some noise, say my name. Hey, how are you doing? Hey, what you doing? What you watching on the TV? What's for lunch? Something. So I know you're coming, so that you're being 2 feet away from me isn't a surprise. And I have a sister-in-law that's lived with us for the last 8 weeks because of the COVID-19 and her being in Texas instead of Wisconsin, where she typically lives. And she would do that to me. She'll walk up on little tippy-toe feet and touch me real soft. It scares the bejesus out of me. I jump out of my chair. And I've been visually impaired all my life. It's not my vision. It's that I didn't hear her coming, you know?
Lord.
And I'm like, stop your tippy-toeing around. Well, I didn't want to disturb you. Well, disturb me. I want to know you're coming. You know, and do it in a sweet way. Don't get all huffy like I just got. All right. Do it in a sweet way and ask them to help you by doing this. Tell them how much of a difference it'll make to you. And then they're going to be more likely to do it. And when they forget, be sweet about it. Say, you know what? I asked you and you forgot, and it's okay. I'm over it. I'm through being scared. But it sure would be nice if, as you're coming up toward me, you just start a conversation so I know you're there.
And that's the thing, because because I don't cook anymore, then I'm having to trust someone else that my food is prepared right. And it's just scary to me. It's just like, I just, you know.
All right,
and
well,
I think
you're gonna make a mess the first time you try this, but you can make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, all right?
Oh, well, yeah, I can do that. I can make chicken salad and stuff, and I'm like, you know, if you're going to fry my chicken, I want to make sure my chicken is done.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying?
Amen to
so
that.
I really have a hard time trusting the cook in my house with that. So I just like, you know, it's just, you know, and I think maybe we all, whoever's going to be caring for me, we're going to all have to seek out some type of help or something.
I think a good conversation is helpful, and that may need some professional guidance. So when things are back to normal and you can go back to services, talk to Brooke, talk to the folks at the Lighthouse about, you know, where are some good resources in the community to help me and my family come to Jesus about this. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. Yeah, because I'm like, you know what? I asked for help because I can't see. So if I call your name, don't ask me what, just come see what I want, because I'm asking because I need help. That's the thing.
Those are
And
very
much
very good.
Go
very
ahead.
good. I'll just say very good questions, very good comments.
I mean,
Good
because
conversation.
I mean, if I'm in the kitchen, it's because I don't, or if I ask you to give me something, don't just set it down somewhere. So here, Mom, put it in my hand. You know, I just think that, you know, maybe they need something and I need something, because I'm like, okay, the patience is not there, and a lot of frustration and stuff, because I basically can dress myself. I do everything for myself. You know, I don't drive, and I don't really cook, but
you know,
I can feed myself. So
earlier, Neva
it's just,
earlier Neva made a comment about how people in the home living with someone who's visually impaired sometimes may forget that that person doesn't see as well because they're mobile within the home, and they're you know, as Neva said, I just watched you walk from the bathroom to the kitchen and you didn't walk into anything, or you seem like you have your orientation about you. And so people sometimes they forget that you can't see, and that's difficult because sometimes the reality of that hasn't caught up with them, even though it's caught up with you.
Yeah, and I think that's where it is, because I can maneuver in my house really well, and I think that's where it is, because I do a lot for myself, except maybe cook, you know, or if I put something on the shelf, I need you to put it exactly back where you got it from, and then I won't have to call and ask you where it is. Because if you put it back where I had it, then I would know this is my chicken broth, or, you know, this is where my Pepsi's, or, you know. It's just something I'm just learning, and it's just kind of, I know it can be done. I'm just
baby steps. It takes baby
Uh-huh.
steps. You're not going to be able to leap tall buildings in a single bound, okay?
Right.
But
vision loss is an adjustment for everybody, right? I mean, you have your
Yeah,
personal adjustment.
And I think that's where the problems come in. I'm so used to just being able to comprehend stuff and just go ahead on and do it. Whereas now, you know, I got to just kind of slow my roll, I guess, and kind of just.
Well, and also keep in mind too that at the end of the day, you ultimately, you know how to cook. The knowledge is there, right? It's just a matter of learning an accommodation to allow you to continue doing that in a safe and efficient manner. Just as with orientation and mobility, learning how to use a white cane, that teacher is not there to teach you how to walk. You know how to walk. It's just a matter of learning an accommodation that will allow you and empower you, enable you to continue doing that safely and efficiently. And that's what you need, is to learn some tools of the trade, if you will. And that's why we're here.
Techniques and tools.
Yes.
And then I'll just have her to sign me in the same way she did today for the class on tomorrow.
Yes. Same way, and we'll be here tomorrow at noon. And thanks for all your questions. And
thank you so much for listening.
Sure.
God bless you.
Thank you. Let me ask you something. Is there anything I can get for my TV that can tell me, okay, this is channel so-and-so, and this movie is showing, or on my DVR, but it's just like on one of my cable boxes?
It depends on your cable company, but yes, there are cable boxes that will talk to you, and and there are TVs that will read the menus out loud to you. I'll send Kevin some things that I used to have at Esther's place with some resources for that. And you can reach out to him and get those.
And also we might do in the future a tutorial about that.
Yeah, that's a good topic.
Via Zoom. So those are all great questions. I appreciate those. I think we may have one other question.
We got a couple more questions here. So let's see if we can get to those real quick.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay.
Bob, you with us?
Bob, did you have a question?
Monitor output. Microphone test.
There we go.
Sorry. I wanted to reinforce that, when you lose your sight, you go through a period of grief. but the people around you do too, because they are also going to be missing what you can no longer do for them as effectively or in the same way, and they have adjustments too, and they need you to help them to understand how to react. So it requires some patience from everybody involved.
It does, and it also, family members are grieving for what you have lost, okay? Not just what you can do for them, but how you have changed.
That's true.
And the biggest fear in this country, AFB did research on this in the past, and the biggest fear nationwide is losing vision. More than cancer, more than AIDS, more than losing a limb, people fear blindness. Okay? So sometimes when we're talking about family members, they can be like, well, is that going to happen to me? If that happened to mom, is it going to happen to me? And that can cause them to react differently. But then also just that grieving for change in status. My daughter is 39, and at 19, she was diagnosed with the same vision loss that I have. But prior to that, she had 20/20 vision. We had no idea. And I can remember grieving for her, grieving the fact that I passed along an inherited disorder. You know, it's not something you really want to do as a parent. But on the other hand, it's not something we can help. And my daughter helped me more than anything. And when she said to me, but mom, and you know, remember, she was 19 at the time, but mom, I've seen the kind of life you've lived, and I'm not afraid. I'm fine. I'm going to be fine. You're fine. I'm going to be fine. And hopefully that's an example for those of you who are losing vision later in life. You can set for your children that, okay, they do say that macular degeneration has a genetic component, that if you have a parent with macular degeneration, you're more likely to have it. But if mom goes on to live an effective and fulfilling life as she ages into her golden years, or dad continues to do the hobbies he's always loved to do and still has a fulfilled life, then that helps those children be less afraid of what their senior years are going to be like.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Neva. Well, is there any other questions? I think we're going to go ahead and wrap up here.
Alice has a question.
Alice, okay.
You are unmuted by host. Audio now unmuted.
I was just going to say the same thing. It was laughable because my daughter's been really good lately. She's gotten to learn not to leave me behind sometimes because they go to new places. And the other day, my granddaughter's with her, and they took off, and I was, okay, I can follow behind here, but I don't know where I'm going. And my legs aren't quite as sturdy because I'm older. And they turned around and looked at me and like, oh, I guess we forgot, Mom. Because they do, they don't think about it.
And it's not meanness, it's not unkindness, it's just knowing that you're a capable human and forgetting, like Sean or Kevin was saying earlier. Sorry, I don't talk to you guys often enough on the same call to recognize your voices.
It becomes funny after a while.
It does. Right. Like I said, I've been married to my husband 43 years. We've known each other 45 years, and he still does it. So you'd think he'd catch on, but.
Right.
Well, Neva, this is Kevin.
Hey, everybody, and thank you.
Thank you, Alice.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Me and Kevin get confused for each other all the time. So I think we don't look alike, but we sound alike.
Your voices are similar enough that I'd have to be on calls with you for a while before I'd be able to pick you out for sure.
Have to be careful. We might play a trick on you, though.
Yeah.
So,
like
Neva,
one more question, Kevin.
We have one more question. Okay, that's fine.
I was going to say
Hi, Kevin and Sean and Alex and Rebecca and everybody else listening. I do have a comment regarding Spectrum. I have Spectrum. I used to have DirecTV before I went blind, and now since I've been blind, I have Spectrum. Spectrum offers on their receiver or whatever, they have a navigation narrator that you can, if you enable that, it will give you the channel, the program, when it starts, when it ends, the descriptions and so forth. It's a wonderful tool, and I can even use it with my smart TV that I have it streamed through Roku.
Great.
If you're using the Spectrum app.
Good to know.
And they're also, I think they're also part of Charter, or Charter bought them out, or whatever the hell the case may be. But if you look up Charter or Spectrum, they offer it, and I highly recommend it. It's very good. It helps me a lot.
That's great.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thanks, Anthony.
You're welcome.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me, Kevin, and for hosting, Kevin and Sean. I've enjoyed being here. And if there's ever a topic that I can help with, you guys reach out to me, okay?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Neva. You've been a delight.
Thanks very much. Y'all have a great group. I'm so proud of what you're doing.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neva.
You bet. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.